How was your Thanksgiving?
It was awkward.
Tell me about it.
Well, we haven't seen my grandpa for about 8 years, and then suddenly he came back into our lives about a month and a half ago, and he's like the thin supremacist, white supremacist kind of person from
special needs.
Way back. He's 92. Yeah. So when I thought I was doing pretty good until I was getting ready for Thanksgiving, and then all of a sudden I found myself like judging my kids and like, okay, you're not dressed this way, and my older son's overweight, so I was like, oh, you need to put on this shirt and that shirt, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing to them? To try and not have that man judge us.
So basically, you're judging everybody.
Yes, that's what came to light after the fact. Because I'm like, he is sick. I can look at him and tell that he is mentally ill.
Well, he's 92, but you're the one who's doing it. So get him out of the story. You're the one who's doing this, not him.
Yeah, that's what I realized after. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just the same. I'm that same.
You believe it. You're
curmudgeon.
Yeah. Well, you're accommodating to it. You could say you're accommodating to that belief system.
Because I believe that that's the truth or the way things should be. My God.
Or maybe not that degree, but you are more afraid of his criticism than you are that belief.
Yeah.
Just think about it. I mean, is it really you that believes that, or you just believe you're afraid that people are out there are going to criticize you? What are you more afraid of, right?
Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah. So be aware of that. You're accommodating to it. You're actually supporting it. You're sustaining it. You're maintaining it. You're promoting it. I don't know if you necessarily would go out and teach it.
No.
I don't think you would go to someone else's house and judge them that way. Yeah.
Not right now. Maybe before, looking over everybody's outfit to make sure their fat wasn't showing or something stupid like that,
Well, what is that really about? Is it about the fact that you believe they're inferior, or you don't want people to think poorly about you?
That's it right there. I don't want people to think poorly of me.
Right? So consider the belief in the people. This is important, right? That you are accommodating to, right? Something that was apparent to me was that by not being real with my mom, for example, by continuing to, by not being truthful, by not telling her the truth of the fact that I was drinking alcohol in college, that I had a boyfriend that wasn't a member of the church, that I was essentially kind of enabling the illusion that this religion was superior.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't willing to say, no, it doesn't work for me. It has caused this much mental damage to my brain. Like I've literally been damaged by that belief system. By not, I don't have to tell her that, but by accommodating to that belief system and just enabling it, it's almost like no one really is discussing the bad things about it.
Yeah.
That are really harmful. I was harmed by it.
Yeah.
Especially the extreme, fundamental application of it. There's no grace, there's no lenience. So maybe it's not the belief so much as it is that it's taken so seriously.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in this case, you're accommodating to thin supremacy.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that's sustaining it in a sense. Basically saying it is true, therefore my children are worthy of shame and judgment, and I have to protect them from that. Right? Versus, you're just, I don't know. There's a fine line between being aggressively anti.
Yeah.
Which is not what I would recommend. That's like the same thing.
Yeah, that's just another focus to steal.
Same thing, right? It's really a matter of just be real and truthful and let the truth tell its own story.
Yeah.
So be
Yep.
happy, enjoy him, and invite him in your home and let him feel like shit for judging you. Because it'll create a weirdness if you're not, if you're eventually you're a good person, that he may or may not, it's really none of your business, evolve outside of his own dumb belief systems that he's internalized from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
The ignorance, right? From 100 years ago, the misogyny from 100 years ago, the thin supremacy that came out of the World War II, all of the stuff that he's a product of. We don't have to judge your grandfather. We can just say, hey, he's a product of that time that our generation has suffered greatly from. And we're the generation that's going to stop this now from going to our children. So, oh my God, every time someone says World War II generation, the greatest generation, I just want to go, what are you talking about? I mean, what?
That's horrific.
Well, it's like, God. What do you mean by that? Because we're still recovering from the narcissism of America's the best in the whole world type of bullshit. We're still recovering from that.
Yeah, really. Yep.
Women are to be in the home, It's really creepy.
Yeah, because then you're not allowed to be like
a true gift to your family.
Own person.
Correct. Yeah. Doesn't mean that you don't necessarily naturally want to be at home with your kids. That, to me, was very natural.
Yeah.
I was nursing, and I was, there was something very inherent around my maternal aspect of me that is evolutionary, right? We don't need to say it's owned by culture. Some of that is just primal. My husband's and son's desire to go and, they're not as afraid of danger, right? There's something very primitive. Go for it, right? There's very definite differences, but there's uniqueness about us as individuals and what we bring to the table to the family. So by allowing each of us to just be and to give our assets that are natural, it's almost like, don't you agree that would be almost more beneficial than forcing everybody to be a certain role?
Yeah.
Despite the resentment that occurs, the sense of inadequacy when you're put into a role that you really don't fit into. Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
His generation was very much anger driven, forceful driven, and full of PTSD. They just didn't even know it because they didn't have the word PTSD after World War I, World War II.
Yeah, they just locked people up.
They just said, go home and go to work now. Be happy.
Yeah.
You're American, So if you go back to that generation, you can see that he's freaking clueless. And at 91, 92, special.
Yeah. That's how I saw him after, I was so angry at first, and then when it registered to me, what was really going on, I just saw him and he looked like a little boy sitting there, just
innocent.
like a little tiny stinker boy who was trying to protect himself, and and I felt sad for him that he's gone 92 years feeling like that,
Did he come across judgy and?
Yeah, we had to take him home. He lives in a boarding care right now, and we had to have him exit the place because he's really overbearing and forceful and just, oh my gosh, he's like, he tries to control everybody, get out. My uncle is handicapped and he was in charge of him for so long, so he was just directing him around, and we're like, you're not in charge anymore, you can't do this to people anymore,
And how much credibility are you going to give a 91-year-old, fragile, probably has dementia, just clueless as to how the real world works at this point? He's really good at how the world worked in 1940, 1950. Right. Like he could do great back then.
Yeah.
Completely clueless as to how reality works, and you kind of have to really give him grace and forgiveness and to see miserable. And he may have been very excited to come and hang out with family, and even though he can't get out of his curmudgeon, angry old man narcissism, right?
Yeah. 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 I know he was. He really wanted to.
Right?
And I think he actually did the best that he could,
Right. Okay, so back to how you
Yeah.
were trying to get your kids to accommodate to that tiny little man's little head, right?
Yeah.
From 1952 or 53, his like
Yeah.
white supremacy, thin supremacy, misogynistic, narcissism you're accommodating to in 2018.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, think about that in terms of our entire culture, trying to accommodate to the baby boomer generation and how there's a big, like, kind of ignorance and naive to reality today. And and the narcissism and supremacy that came from that generation, especially with the ease of the 1980s, how easy it was to buy a house and support a family with one mom, with one person at home. And you could go, no one could, who does that except for the uber rich?
Yeah.
Right? And if you're not uber rich, you're extremely poor or living in poverty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a reality in here that you and I are a part of right now. And eventually we're going to be out of touch with reality, and we're going to be the old curmudgeon old man, and we're going to...
Right. Oh my gosh, trying to.
But that's why I'm like, give him some grace, but recognize who you're giving credibility to your children over.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well,
you're making your kids accommodate. You're accommodating to that person. How important was your grandpa in your upbringing, and your kid and your father's? How much of that kind of,
like, well, he was super. Abusive, so everybody was afraid, and everybody was. Was he a
vet?
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. My father's a Vietnam vet. He's a Purple Heart. I have a brother who's enlisted. I have a lot of family. I have a lot of respect for the military, but when you come home from war and post-traumatic stress and that type of trauma, the science is showing that when it's not addressed, that the way a person copes is through becoming very controlling of their environment, and they can do it by manipulating people through rage and anger. That's
exactly him. That's exactly him. And he was like put in. Well, when he was discharged, he was in an institution for anxiety and depression.
They didn't call it PTSD back then.
No.
So today he would have been given so much more help, awareness, and they still need to improve it. Like, I know people who are firemen, they don't get, from what I'm aware of, there is no psychological support for those police, for firemen, for firewomen, and they're what they see a lot. So that whole generation came back from war and had excruciating PTSD, and you can see why then, if your brain is trying to find a place of safety, why that generation would be so intensely controlling, and why they would gravitate to, compartmentalizing a woman into a box because she had taken over the workplace. So they took women out of the workplace, and why they would then, gravitate to such radical conservatism and religiosity after that time. And you can see why then that the X generation basically gave a big FU in the 1960s and 70s just to recover from the extreme radical controllingness.
Whoa, yeah.
Right? And then we have my dad, your dad, my father-in-law, who came out of Vietnam War, and they were treated like utter shit, and they're dealing with PTSD, not knowing what it was, and why they dealt with it with rage, obsessive compulsiveness, money hunger. I mean, just trying to alcoholism, drug abuse. I mean, just how these generations have coped with kind of the damages of war.
Yeah.
And here we are as the children of these people. I'm a recovered PTSD Vietnam vet's daughter.
Oh, wow.
And how I dealt with it. because you don't question your parents. Your dad didn't question his father, right? No one, you as a child, you just believe that these are adults who love and care for you and are doing the best they can for you. And that's what the parents thought too.
Yeah.
I know. So if you give it grace and you see, okay, this 92-year-old is stuck in 1950 something, there's no way you're going to change him. And he really believes that that's the right thing to do. And based on that, he's going to feel so inadequate to handle reality today, and he's not going to like it.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to make him very uncomfortable, have tons of cognitive dissonance. It's not going to make sense. His way of dealing with it is to clutch onto his narcissism.
Yeah.
Poor guy's probably miserable.
He is. Yeah, I can see that. He is. Yeah. Wow.
So by you just being real, letting your kids be real, it's going to make it, it gives your kids the ability to see that your grandpa, their great grandpa, is an angry person. Yeah, but if you have to accommodate, you better get dressed, you better do that. What you're saying is his opinion is valid.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. My poor baby.
Well,
my oldest son.
Stop judging yourself. Don't judge yourself. It's like you just had no awareness that you were still held hostage to this man's PTSD.
Yeah.
You had to stay inside his space of comfort, which was extreme radical controllingness. The way you dress, the way you are, the way you, behave.
Yeah, what you eat, what you wear. Oh my
all
God.
Of it.
Yeah, everything.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense relative to how insecure he was and how inflamed and enraged and how traumatized. Guarantee you, before trauma, he was not this way. We're not born this way. We're born with these mechanisms in place just in case in certain circumstances, but this isn't the natural way that our brains function when you come out of that zone, right? There's a special zone when his state of mind would be relevant and needed.
Yeah, like if
we were in a bunker and there was a war zone, yes, we would want him to micromanage everything, and he'd be good at it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same with like the dieting industry. If the food was really laced with arsenic everywhere, we would want someone with OCD, obsessive compulsive, orthorexia. But we don't have food laced with arsenic, so their brain function doesn't make any sense today.
Yeah, but then that's what the kind of diet industry, clean eating makes you think.
Correct, because they have the brain of they are acting as if there's arsenic in your food.
Yeah.
But there's no arsenic in your food, so that's why it's so crazy.
Just 1 second. Sorry about that.
No worries. I hear a little baby back there.
Yeah, he's just waking up. Here you go. You okay?
That's called cognitive distortion, by the way. That's just a language for distorting reality into, it's like catastrophizing everything. It's living in fear. So when you look at the diet industry, look at all the, after Christmas, which is coming up, after the holiday season, you're going to notice so much fear mongering about food coming out. All of the dieting, all of the cleansing, like you need to detoxify your body. Like you're toxic. Toxic is like a big deal. Remember those toxic stickers, the yuck stickers?
Yeah.
Like you're drinking bleach?
Yeah.
So they're distorting everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I've already been seeing things like that, like on Facebook, people talking about their new diet and this new coffee that you just drink once in the morning and all these things,
I don't know about you, but do you want to spend the rest of your life thinking about shit like that? Do you really want that to be your life's focus? This, to me, in terms of the religious stuff, is like, do you really want to spend every morning reading the scriptures forever? The same exact goddamn scriptures that never change? Is that all you want to talk about every day, all day long?
No. My gosh.
See, for me, I was raised in the radicalism of it. So you can imagine, like, when I chose I'm kind of done. I'm done. I've read enough.
Yeah.
I've done enough. I volunteered enough. I gave my money. Like every single thing I was raised to do. And it was raised to keep me safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what it was meant for in the first place, but then it just goes to an extreme.
It was way more than it ever should have been.
Yeah.
Well, way more than ever needed to be. Again, it was protecting my father from so much shame he carried for killing people in Vietnam.
Yeah.
That would be my assumption. I'm talking from my perspective. If he was here, he'd probably be like, she didn't even know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
But this is how I come to forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
And my mother was a huge part of that because she had her own personal issues, and she's the one trying to keep a marriage together with a husband who's got rage problems, like major issues.
Wow. Yep. My gosh, that just opens up so much about the way the family worked, you know?
If you can, if it makes sense to you, it's like, you got to give it grace and recognize that the people with trauma are the ones that are the most controlling. They have to have people stay in their safe space. They need it. Because as soon as there's vulnerability, especially with your own family and children, you're going to have symptoms of withdrawal, anger. You're going to go through like a drug withdrawal. Even though you're not taking drugs, you're taking the drug of controlling this, right?
Wow. Yeah, and that's what it feels like too, because you get that rush, like, you know, like adrenaline.
Yeah, when it's working, when you're like, I am perfect. My house is awesome. I go to church. I'm superior. You are getting high on yourself. It's called high on your ego. High on your self-righteousness. And people get high on that. And so, like, when people lose weight and they get all like, they love the thinnerness. Like, they literally have fallen in love with thinness.
Yeah, I remember feeling that way.
I know. It is crazy how the brain works. When you believe, it means you're safe. It's like, oh, I'm finally here. I'm safe. Well, oh, shit. You better not gain some weight back because you're about to have some serious withdrawals.
Yeah.
Like, serious.
Yep.
You're not going to necessarily puke, but you're going to have rage, anxiety, paranoia.
Yeah.
You'll be a complete, total abusive person to people around you. Family you love, you'll abuse the hell out of them to get what you need.
My gosh. Yep. Yeah, that just totally describes me too right
now. Well, just understand yourself.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to help you do is actually surrender, get through it, right? So when you recovered from, drug addiction, you had to sit through a lot of crap. Just sit through it.
Yeah.
And not listen to yourself.
Yeah, that's been the hardest part. I've been, wishing that I could just do that where just instant recovery happens. But it's just kind of coming piece by piece,
Well, you gotta figure out what you gotta give up. You don't maybe necessarily know all the things that you've attached to that thinner ideology.
Yeah, that's why it's happening like that because little things are coming here and there, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I see.
Right, like, and you don't know until you gotta give it up. Yep. So what I have people do, if you want to get this over with quickly, is you go through permanence. So one of the things a lot of people don't add to this kind of recipe is permanence. They always think someday I'll lose it. And right away, you're stopping the recovery process.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because by saying I will lose it later, I'll lose the weight later, you're basically not facing the actual issues, right? So if you make it a permanent weight gain, now you got to face that dissonance. Now you got to face what's really scary if you make it permanent. So many people, especially the anorexic people I work with and bulimic people, they're like, okay, I'm willing to gain weight because they have to start with weight gain, right?
Yeah.
Then the back of their mind, they're like, oh, and at some point I'm going to lose it. So for now, I'm going to give myself the grace. I'm going to give myself this freedom because I want to be able to eat. Right. And I don't want to have all this crazy shit. And they do get a sense of freedom, but it's very temporary. Yeah. And so it comes back because they only did this for a temporary conditional reason. Right. And so did they really recover?
No.
Partly, slightly.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say that that's not worth it. It is worth some sense of like, oh my God, there is a way out. There's benefit to that knowledge. There is grace in the body image, so there's benefit there. but because it's temporary, it's just like a watered down version of what recovery feels like. And they don't have to, it's not taking full responsibility for facing the beliefs that you internalized at some point. You've internalized, and it became your belief that thinner is better and it will make you happier. So if you think of it like a love relationship, you are in a marriage with thinnerness.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be thin. It's just as thinner than you are. And you're in love with the idea that you're going to physically feel better. You're in love with the idea that you will feel proud of yourself, that you will feel that you have healed, that you can recoup the damages that you did all those years binge eating. That you can get rid of those damages, right? And feel better about it, because there's some people feel guilty about the fact that they've damaged their body. You don't have to then go through what grace is, because you're going to fix it later. That's not grace.
Yeah.
That's not grace. That's repentance. That's different.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I kept telling myself too. I'm gonna get this mindset right, and then it won't be about being thin. It'll just be about being healthy.
That's the wolf in sheep's clothing right there.
Yes.
Because you've been indoctrinated or brainwashed to believe that thinnerness is healthiness. And that, I'll tell you right now, some of the most unhealthy people I work with are thinner.
Yes. Yep.
They're the most suicidal, have the most inflammation, have the most paranoia. They're the most demented. They're most self-righteous, the more pathologically self-centeredly narcissistic. They're more likely to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it really healthy when you're self-righteous about whatever that is?
Wow. No.
Yeah. Why is it about you? What does the body have to do with you?
Yeah.
Nothing. It's a body. It's giving you life. It's doing it for free. It actually has done it at a cost. It pays the fee of your willingness to abuse it. It's still working for you. Right?
Yeah.
So what would life be like if there was no body to abuse? You could not take the body and use it as your personal whipping pole.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's an interesting thought right there.
Yeah, because you've entitled yourself to this type of abuse. Like, this is your one entity that you get to be the biggest. You're the asshole. You're the molester, abuser, demented a-hole, that you're willing to throw this body under the bus for whatever reason you think you deserve. So if you're done, if the body's like, yeah, I'm dead now, you killed me.
Wow.
Would you do it with the next body?
No.
How would you cope with your insecurities? Would you do it to another person?
Wow.
What I've seen is that when people do it to or when someone who's received it says, I'm not willing to do that to another human being, they do it to themselves. So you're still repeating the narcissism, you just do it within yourself. That type of abusiveness, pathological abusiveness. So you have to really question if the body really is worthy of this type of wretched disgust that you carry about it. The judgment that it is diseased and unhealthy. There's something wrong with it. It's done something wrong when it's done absolutely above and beyond, more so than what it's supposed to do. Just to keep you alive. You're still alive. It's doing its job.
Yeah.
It's provided you babies. Perfect ones.
Yep.
With perfect eyeballs. That in and of itself is freaking nuts. Your body created those eyeballs. Did you know that?
Right.
Not you. You didn't do shit.
Yeah. Wow. Yep.
So when do you say, I will never abuse this body again? And that includes some concept of what I want that makes it better than it actually is.
Yeah.
I don't know. You have to sit back and really question your motives with recovery. I think everybody does. You know, everybody to some degree, especially the clients that I've worked with who've been binge eating and they have obesity or morbid obesity. It really is self-serving recovery. So is it really recovery?
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's a step that has to be overcome.
Yeah.
That could be where you're at.
Yeah. I really feel like this, I don't know, like this dumb wall, you know, where I'm like, I feel like I'm right at the edge of it, but something just holds me back.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a suggestion.
Okay.
It's your ego.
Yeah.
There is underneath it. So when you experience rage, anger, that's like basically, that's kind of an inflated, like last ditch effort to fight, right? I want you to admit failure. We're going to go through the 12 steps right now. Right?
Okay.
With yourself. This is not with alcohol. This is not with drugs. This is not with impulsive buying and shopping. This is with yourself.
Okay.
And you're to accept your truth and reality, meaning that not the truth and reality of how you cope, because that's what you're covering yourself up with. Don't let yourself be that way. What's going to happen is you're going to end up feeling really scared.
Yeah.
And I know for me, if it is as strong as it was for me, it's going to feel like you're going to die. Literally.
Yeah,
it's not just a figurative I die. It is physically going to manifest as if you don't do something, you're going to die. You won't exist. There will be no you. You aren't going to be important. You know, like the you of how you've identified yourself will go away. Well, isn't that what we want?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I can feel that coming, and then every time I stop it with, you know, something.
Yeah. So
I let something distract me, or you know.
Very simply, if you keep on distracting yourself, whether it's Facebook, shopping,